This is the second part of an account taken from the United States National Archives of the US Army describing the integration of port sections and attached units at the port of Southampton prior to D-Day and during Operation Overlord. It is only possible to present a skeleton idea of the vast amount of integration among the various services. One of the more obvious activities was that of the military police. Stationed at key points, they saved valuable time in allowing convoys to pass unbroken. Not only were they employed in the immediate waterfront area, but they also assisted the Southampton police in many cases by handling traffic at congested points outside the dock region. Besides this traffic control duty, military police carried out their routine guard duty on the waterfront, watching over precious invasion materials. They assisted in the movement of prisoners of war and in confiscating articles which the prisoners of war had on their persons. In one instance they apprehended foreign stowaways. To the two port battalions attached to the 14th Port, the 499th, which was commanded by Major Urquhart Taylor, and the 512th, which was commanded by Major James G. Buchanan, must go the bulk of the credit for the actual loading of the motor transports. These vessels, converted from American Liberty ships, amounted to vehicle ferry boats. In 4 of the 5 hatches on the standard Liberty ship, vehicles were loaded. The 5th hatch was reserved for the drivers of the vehicles. Vehicle loading required technical skill and patience far greater than that needed for ordinary cargo. Each vehicle had to be anchored within the hatch so that it would not roll or be tossed about when the ship was at sea. Much care had to be taken in the actual handling of the vehicles, inasmuch as many of them would become useless if vital portions were damaged during loading or unloading. Often working on as long as 30, 40 and 50 consecutive hours, these men showed great endurance in getting war material loaded for their brothers-in-arms across the Channel. Moving these port battalion stevedores to and from their work involved great effort. To fill the demand, additional British trucks and buses were obtained. Over 100 buses and trucks were used to transport over 2,000 men daily. Both the trucks and the wages of their drivers were provided for under reverse lend-lease. The 3890 Truck Company was kept busy during the month, 30% of its entire personnel being on night duty. Besides assisting in the movement of personnel of the 2 port battalions, the company also moved thousands of rations from nearby depots to the Southampton area. In one 3-day period alone, over 570,000 rations were hauled from Depot G47 to the port. During June, the company dispensed over 75,000 gallons of gasoline, and its vehicles travelled some 325,000 miles. Among the spectacular activities were those experienced by the 2 harbour craft companies making the cross-channel voyage. These 2, the 329th, Captain O.A. Jeffcoat commanding, and the 330th, Captain William S. Delafield commanding officer, operated many small craft which towed Phoenix units, bridge spans and pierheads from shore waters at Southsea to sea-going tugs. The duties of these 2 organisations on the far shore consisted of 1. Pushing landing craft onto the beaches when the craft could not reach them alone because of tides or shallow waters. 2. Pulling the craft off the beaches when unloaded and when the craft themselves could not do so under their own power. 3. Placing Phoenix units, bridge units and pierheads which they towed across the channel in their proper positions. 4. Towing and placing special breakwater ships which later made up the beach harbour breakwaters. 5. Sea rescue work, which, though not as planned part of the organisation's duties, was one of the more active types of duties on the far shore. So great was their contribution that letters of commendation were written by authorities both of the British and United States Navy. Although not a life was lost during all this activity, 9 of the 14th Port's small craft were heavily damaged, some beyond repair. One of the crews was credited with having destroyed an enemy plane. Great responsibility was placed on the port's quartermaster section during the month. Loaded on motor transport vessels were 645,000 10-in-1 rations, 70,000 K rations and lesser amounts of C rations. No motor transport left the port without its full quota of rations. The quartermaster made available to the invasion fleet some 368,000 gallons of diesel oil, 448,000 gallons of petrol and 39,000 gallons of lubrication oils. Over 6,000 army blankets were issued on motor transports. Of life preservers, 50,000 of the dual tube type were issued and 96,000 of the K-pop variety were distributed. While the aforementioned services contributed much to the invasion progress, no section or unit went without some contribution. For example, the signal section handled a 23% increase in teleprint messages and a 125% increase in ordinary messages. An added service of the signal section was that of forwarding all press correspondence from this area, as well as many from the Normandy scene. Ordnance personnel working on a 24-hour basis aided in the inspection and stowage of vehicles of motor transports. In addition, valuable assistance was rendered in the supervision of loading ordnance supplies aboard craft. The engineers constructed a new 14th Port headquarters and set up a 1,000-man mess in the Taunton School. In addition, the utility shop devised many of the blocks and other materials used in anchoring vehicles loaded on motor transports. The medical section supplied needed medical material for motor transports as well as for hospital ships and harbour craft. Red Bull medical supplies were handled through the cooperation of this section. The port surgeon also performed liaison duties with American hospital ships discharging casualties here. The port veterinarian's office inspected rations loaded on vessels on a 24-hour basis. The port air office checked and tallied much Red Bull Air Corps supplies passing through the port. In addition, the port air office was charged with facilitating trips to Normandy by authorised army personnel and war correspondents. The chemical warfare section helped supervise the loading of POL supplies, in addition to its routine duties involving CWS material. Many men not equipped with the required CWS equipment were supplied with the necessary material by the port CWS office. In the final analysis, however, only the statistics revealing the number and types of ships loaded told the real activity of the port sections and attached units.